You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Winning Tactics Podcast Day. My favorite day of the week, and I hope that it is your favorite day of the week as well. As always, we appreciate it if you can take a minute to hop on over to thewinningtactics.com and click on that subscribe link, fill in your email so you can get your free copy of Becoming a Better Business Leader. So I'm excited for today's show because today's show is really something that is, I think, often misunderstood in the world of how we portray ourselves and how we carry ourselves through the world. And so today we are talking about resilience in leaders. And, I really think this is a topic that leaders need to spend some time really thinking about and reflecting on. So excited to have Jodi on the show. Jodi, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yep, thank you so much for having me on, Adam. So I work with businesses in the area of resilience, leadership and culture, and they're actually all quite related. So helping individuals to build their own resilience to deal with the challenges that happen in life and in business, leaders to actually lead in a way that creates resilience in their team and resilience in themselves, and then from an organizational culture point of view, creating a culture that helps resilience and helps productivity and general positive culture stuff in businesses. So, yeah.
I love it. It's such a misnomer that, leaders often are put in this bucket of, well, they have to know everything and be 100% on all the time. And, and it's so frustrating as I look at my own journey as a leader when I was young and trying to figure that out. And I felt that was the way I needed to be. And, if I would have known what I know now, I would have realized that there's a lot more to it than me just always having the right answer or seeming to be the smartest guy in the room. So I want to lay some foundations here because I think the word resilience when it comes to business and personal development is often misunderstood. So let's start off with, what does resilience really mean?
Yes, so I look at it almost on three kind of bits to it. So the first one is building up things in yourself that you stay in a state of calm as much as possible. And there's various lifestyle things you can do to assist you with that. So that's the first side. But the reality is we live in a modern stressed world and nobody is Zen 24/7, nobody. So the second side is when you are feeling stressed, firstly, actually detecting it in yourself, because what I find is that there is so much stress in modern society and most people live in a state of stress to the point that they don't even realise it. So the first step is to realise it and then have go-to things that can bring yourself back to calm as quickly as possible, so that you can operate more from that calm, clear thought mode. The third side is sometimes there's things where just say everything's going wrong, you've got a really difficult situation, and having that kind of inner fortitude, just that basically push through attitude so that you can get out at the other end and see the light at the end of the tunnel and not be in sort of victim mode or, you pretty much take that, this sucks, but I'm pushing through to the other end. That's kind of the third. It's like that grit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Stress is, it's important sometimes, but it can also destroy us, right? There's different types of stress. There's healthy stress and there's unhealthy stress. And I've always, that was one of the things I learned early on as a leader, was what was healthy and what wasn't healthy in the stress. In worrying, having the stress of, like, we need to get to our numbers because we have a business objective. That's good, healthy stress, right? But we need to get to our numbers and the whole computer system is down and 6 people called out today, and and it usually leads to that unhealthy stress of in the panic zone. And so as leaders, oftentimes we're just putting this, like, in this box that says, well, go fix this, right? And that's where you were mentioning that third part of, sometimes you just got to push through. But how do you bounce back? How do you start to bounce back from that on an individual level so that you don't burn out? Because I think that's where we're headed here, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, so there is all sorts of lifestyle things that you can do to help yourself, and mindset things. That's probably one of the real keys. When I work with people, I kind of look at resilience on 3 levels. So the lifestyle sort of fits in the second one. The first one is those go-to reset things that work with the physiological response to stress to bring you back to calm. The second one is there's lifestyle things. And the third is, if stress is a regular reoccurring thing, there are usually subconscious things, so things we're not aware of that are working against us in terms of stress. So probably the easiest thing is to work to start with on the lifestyle. So your basics, and there's a whole range of things, but just to go through some of them, basics of things like sleep, diet, and exercise. Those 3 pillars, which everybody knows are really important, but most people don't live the knowing.
Charged.
An enormous impact. Sleep's the obvious one. If you don't get a good night's sleep, you're more likely to feel stress. And if you're feeling stressed, you're less likely to get a good night's sleep. So things like really working on your sleep so you're getting good quality and quantity of sleep. And there's a whole range. So things like connections and making sure you schedule in time to do things you love. And yeah, there's a whole range of lifestyle things, and also mindset things. So the attitudes of how you actually view the things that happen in your life.
Yeah, I love that you talk about doing the things that you love. For me, like, I disconnect. Every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., I disconnect and get to do all kinds of interviews with amazing people like yourself. But Wednesday's bowling night, and I leave for bowling, and I don't worry about work. I don't worry about business. I don't worry about anything but bowling night. I don't, and I come home, I could bowl terrible, and I come home feeling refreshed, and it's like, it's that moment that you realize that you've, like, just totally checked out of all the chaos and said, I'm going to focus on this one thing, and it's fun and I enjoy doing it. So it is, to me, it's a huge, huge call out. So, I love that. I want to shift gears just a little bit. I want to take this to to the next level, right? Because resilience in a personal level is huge, but leaders also need to build resilience for not only themselves but their teams as well. And so, first of all, why is it so important for leaders to build resilience for their teams?
Yep. So there's 2 sides of it as to why leaders would build resilience. The first one, as we've already sort of talked about, it actually allows them to operate better. So things like when we're stressed, the thinking part of our brain doesn't work as well. We're operating more out of that fight, flight, or freeze. They call it the reptilian part of the brain. So the really primitive kind of survival part of the brain. So basically, a leader being able to develop their own resilience means that they can operate at their best. So that's the first side. On the second side, leaders, whether it's conscious or not, they are watched as like the role model for their team. So if they're living in a state of stress, they're basically giving that impression as that's an acceptable, productive, okay way for their team to carry on. Whereas if they're living from a state of calm, their team will see that, and they will, whether they're conscious of it or not, will try to copy that and basically follow that lead. So extremely important from both sides.
It's interesting, right? I look at teams that have been on both as a leader and as a participant, right? And one of the things I notice is all the teams that I've ever been on that have been higher stress have way lower productivity. Have you ever noticed that with teams? And what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. There's a model of this called the stress curve. So anybody who's familiar with the bell curve basically process. So it goes back to what you were talking about originally, that a certain degree of stress is good. So if you look at the left-hand side of the bell curve, basically it's adding stress, and so if you look at stress and productivity. So as you're adding stress, yes, it gets to the point where it's more productive. But if you go to the right-hand side of the bell curve, that's when the stress level is either prolonged as in lasting for a long period of time, or particularly high. And what you will find is exactly what you said, that's when productivity goes wrong, and that's when actually people's well-being goes down as well. So yes, there is a certain degree is good, but if it's for too long or too much intensity, yeah, absolutely, the productivity, it goes down very, very quickly over that right-hand side of the bell curve.
What I think is interesting about this, right, is, I go back to looking at my own experience in this, right, is the teams that continually lived in a higher stress states over a longer period of time, the culture started to tank as well, which even in those low stress moments, well, now the culture was so terrible that productivity suffered as well. And so like, it's this huge, I think it's, I call it the vicious cycle, right? So how does resilience play into culture?
Yeah, and this is exactly why I work on all three levels, as in individual resilience, leadership and culture, exactly because of what you've just said. They're totally interrelated. So from a cultural perspective, it's about setting up things in the culture or in the work practices that allow people to be in a lot more of a state of calm and not at that high stress level. And obviously, as you're talking about whole culture, it's a lot more individual culture and looking at individual practices. But I mean, basic things like it is human nature to want to feel cared for, acknowledged, appreciated, all that basic human stuff. But it so often gets missed, forgotten, not considered important, and just things like instilling, and as I said, there's a whole range of these, but instilling things into your workplace and into your leadership style where people do feel that cared for, heard, acknowledged, appreciated. So important.
I often joke that thank you is like the most powerful words on the planet, but there's a piece of truth to that. Like, even just thanking somebody for showing up on time, like to work every day, thank you for getting the job done. Like, those are small things, and yeah, it's part of their expectation as an employee, but like at the end of the day, just voicing that to them totally changes the tone around, how they react and what they think. So
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about how leaders can build their own resilience first, and then I think we'll tailor into how that plays into the teams and how the leader can build the team's resilience with some specific strategies. So what are some of those strategies that leaders can use to start building their own resilience?
Yep. So as I said earlier, the three levels. So the first level that I work with people is realizing when they're stressed. So becoming really aware of your own stress in yourself, and even just being conscious you have to be aware of it is kind of half of that battle. And then having go-tos to bring yourself back to calm if you are feeling stressed, so that you don't behave in a way that isn't ideal and that sort of stuff. So most of those go to that physiological response of the thinking part of the brain shutting down, heart rate going up, blood flow going to extremities, all that sort of physiological response of stress. So there's a whole range of those resets. Probably the one that works for most people, not everybody, but most people, is just deep belly breathing. So you sit down upright and concentrate on breathing deeply from the bottom of your lungs. It's called belly breathing because your belly goes in and out if you do it properly. And that really slow belly breathing, that alone will actually calm your nervous system and bring you back to calm. And as I said, there's a whole range of other ones. So that's the first thing. Recognise when you're stressed, bring yourself back to calm so you can operate from that calmer state. The second is look at those things in your life that help your well-being or work away from your well-being. So as I said before, sleep, diet, exercise. The most basic, and things like doing things you love, connections, work-life balance, setting up things like barriers of time and space where there's work and non-work and that sort of stuff, especially for small business people. That's important because life tends to mould into business for small business people.
Yes, very much so.
So really going through and looking at all of those things in your life and what's actually really going to make a difference to your well-being. And from the mindset part of that, what are things that are actually working against you? Do you have this negativity bias? Do you, if you make a mistake or don't perform as well, do you basically put yourself down in your own head? There's all sorts of things that make an enormous difference to your well-being in mindset. And the third side, as I mentioned, people whose stress is a regular, reoccurring or large impact thing in their life, there are generally underlying subconscious things that work against them. So if you say for a small business person, if they have a subconscious thing that says, you mentioned at the start of the show that you have to know everything. That's one of them, that I'm not good enough unless I know everything. Well, identifying that as a subconscious belief and actually going, okay, well, is that reality, and working through and working ways to create a different reality will make an enormous difference. And that's for people, as I said, who it's a regular, reoccurring thing.
Yeah, I love that you mention awareness and you start with awareness, right? Because I think that's such a powerful piece. What are some things that we can do as individuals to help raise our awareness to when we're getting to that stress level?
Yep. As I said, just tuning into what's happening can make a big difference. So most of the time when people are stressed, there will be certain things that happen physically, and for a lot of people, certain things that happen mentally or in their head. So an example would be things like if you're stressed, you feel like your chest is a little bit tight. Or for a lot of people, it's like shoulders start to hurt or feel heavy, or your body will give you signs, and really tuning into that and being aware of it will go a long way for you in you actually developing that skill in yourself. If you're so inclined, and I get a lot of people aren't, things like mindfulness meditation can make an enormous difference. So that's sitting down and actually consciously tuning into different parts of your body and what's going on. And it can be also tuning into different things outside of yourself. A lot of people struggle with that or don't want to do it. I get that. But even just without doing it as a meditation, just tuning in. So when you are going through things in your life, so just say you're having a really happy moment, as an example. All right, so how's this feeling in my body? And actually really tuning in, because in Western society, it's funny, in a lot of ways we're quite disconnected from those messages that our body gives us, and it's a powerhouse of information for us. It really is, not just in relation to stress and resilience, in relation to all sorts of things, in relation to working out what do I actually love, what gives me joy. So when you have something that so just say from a business point of view, just say you spend half an hour teaching somebody something that they haven't done before. And for a lot of people, and I'm one of these people, that gives a real sense of, it's a real sense of achievement, and it's a real feel good to actually be giving and helping to somebody else. Tuning into, okay, that's the reaction I'm having. How's that making me feel? And then tuning into other things that can replicate that in your life makes an enormous difference, because it's very easy just to go, oh, that was good, push it aside and move on to the next thing. But yeah, being really, really aware of your reactions.
No, I love that. And it makes total sense. Thinking, I so often I think in business we're afraid to attach feelings or emotion to what's going on around us, and what you're pointing out is exactly the opposite of that. Is it's time to connect with all of that. That doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't mean you have to be a blubbering ball of crying and in tears. It just means that we need to be aware of what makes us happy, what makes us upset, what makes us feel angry or stressed, and building, just building some markers, our own mental markers in that space. So I want to pause for just a moment because I want to thank my sponsor for the show, Ventiv. Ventiv is doing amazing things for your business. They're helping redefine what a CRM does for you. And really what it comes down to is they have figured out a system that closes the gaps between marketing, sales, service, operations, and really created a system that helps you be more efficient in your small business. Through the month of December here, they do have a special going on where you can get up to 50% off for your first year. So there'll be a link in the show notes, but you can check them out at ventiv.com, and we appreciate their support. So we've been talking quite a bit about resilience kind of on a personal level, right? But as a leader, we also have to help train our teams and help get our teams into this space as well, so that our teams can be productive and manage some of these emotions and things that happen in normal work life. So how as a leader, can we start to work with our teams to really build that resilience that they need to be successful?
Yep. Probably one of the most basic things is actually take the time to really get to know them, and not to get to know them as in what they did on the weekend. Get to know why do they come to work? What's important to them? What isn't? What are they looking for in work? Really taking that time to have that one-on-one conversation with your staff can make an enormous difference, because just as an example, if there's somebody who is motivated towards looking after their family, and they want to be a very active person in terms of looking after their family. If you've got an employee who is due to finish work every day at 5 o'clock, and you fairly regularly ask them to stop for another hour, and to you it's just an hour, but to somebody who just, say, has young children, that's really critical, because that's the time of feed, bath, all that sort of stuff. Now, different people, that's one that most people can relate to, but different people have different things that are or aren't important to them. And actually, unless you ask, a lot of the time you don't know. So that's the first thing. And there's a whole range of others.
Yep. I want to pause there for just a second, because I love that, that simple mindset of, does an hour make a difference to somebody? Well, some it might, some it won't. I look back at an employee that worked for me one time, and they were fairly well financially off, and so the motivation that a lot of the people had on the team was money. For her, the motivation was, I just want to come and be at a place with people and have a bit of the social aspect of the work environment. And that's what was important to her. She didn't need the paycheck. She didn't care about the paycheck. That was her play money. So, it was interesting to learn that her motivation was drastically different than pretty much everybody else on the team in that respect.
Yep. And if you hadn't had that conversation with her, you probably would have never known. And that makes a big difference to how you manage that person.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I didn't try and push her to grow leadership because that's not what she was there for. And if I would have, she probably would have left and gone and found somewhere where she could just show up every day and do her job and have a little socialization and gone home. So, totally agree with you on that knowing her was probably the most important part of understanding that. So what else? What are some of those other pieces to
Yep.
the puzzle?
So a really common one, and it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but I think a lot of people don't sort of get what it means, is psychological safety. So that is about providing an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to voice their opinion, even if it is totally contrary to their manager or other powers that be in the organisation. They feel safe to try new things and risk either failing or not doing very well at it. The reason why it's so important is you think of environments, and most of us, unfortunately, have worked in environments where there isn't psychological safety. The natural human reaction to that is to act in survival mode, to go within, to not help others, to not collaborate, to not innovate, to not develop or develop yourself outside of work so you can get out of there, rather than developing in a way that's going to help both you and the business. So by creating psychological safety, you're creating an environment where people are more inclined to collaborate, help each other, help grow themselves and other people, and develop their own skills, to identify things that may or may not be working in the business and to speak up about it. So that's the key, and that's the great thing about all of these cultural things is they're good for the individuals, they're also good for the managers, and they're also good for the business at large. And as confronting as somebody, as an employee, politely saying, no, I think you're wrong, I would prefer X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z. And as a leader, being okay in yourself actually hearing that and almost encouraging it, because a lot of leaders, you actually have to encourage it because most people will assume that it's not okay for them to say that. Encouraging that, you're actually tapping into the knowledge, skills, experience of that person who is saying it to you. So you're opening yourself up to a range of expertise and a range of ability that you don't have yourself. So, yeah, extraordinarily important.
I love that one. I've always challenged my teams to prove me wrong, right? And don't let me live it down if I am absolutely wrong. Like, the reality is they're the ones doing the work, and they're elbow deep in it every day. And as a leader, we might know the process, we might be very good at the document process, but we are not there doing it every day, and so there's opportunity for us to drop off and maybe miss something that they can come to us and say, you know what, this process needs to change, here's why. And so that's, I think, a really, when you can open that up to your employees, you not only strengthen your employees to critically think, but you open up your business to improve in a very rapid cycle, because the people that are doing the work are the best at the system.
Yep. And you're actually developing future leaders. You're developing people who can lead behind you or lead in your absence because they've got that confidence and innovation. So, yeah, so important.
So I absolutely love our conversation today. You've given us some just absolutely phenomenal strategies about building resilience, both as leaders on a personal level, but also for our teams. And I think both pieces are critical when you look at the overall mission and vision of your business, and how you want your business to move forward. So really appreciate that. I always like to wrap up the show with a final thought. So I leave the floor to you for your final thought today.
So as a leader for a business, I would say really work on yourself. So work on your own well-being and work on your own emotional intelligence of yourself and connecting with other people, because leaders, as I said earlier, leaders set the tone, and really if you think of most good leaders in your life, or leaders that you are aware of, they are generally people who are really in a good place themselves, mentally, physically. So really take the time to work on your own development, because as business leaders, it's very easy to forget that and not do it. And it's extremely important, and the benefits for you personally and for your business are very, very large, and it also will help you be able to sustain those improvements and benefits over a longer period of time.
Absolutely. I love it. That was a great tie-up of everything that we've talked about today. So really, really do appreciate that. Where can people find more information about you or reach out to you if they have any other questions?
So the easiest place is on my website. So that's just www.jodiwoelkerling.com. So you'll see obviously the spelling of my name. So it's just jodiwoelkerling.com. That's the easiest place. In there, there's all sorts of blogs that I've done and information about the services that I offer, and there's ways in there to actually reach out to me. For anybody who wants to sort of see, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So if you look up my name on LinkedIn, you'll see things. If anybody's LinkedIn inclined out there, they're probably the easiest ways. Email wise, you can get in touch through info@jodiwoelkerling.com, and happy to have a chat.
Awesome. Really appreciate that. You have a book out as well too. What is the book name and where can they find it?
World-class leadership. It's basically designed for business leaders, and it's an awareness piece of what are the cultural things that regularly come up as an issue in businesses. In terms of where to find it, go to my website. There's a book page on there, and that'll give you all the information there that you need about the book and how to get hold of it.
Absolutely fantastic. We'll make sure we also get all those links in the show notes as well. For everybody that joined us live, we so appreciate your time this evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in the world. And we look forward to seeing you next week on The Winning Tactics. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.